Hi, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us tonight for this forum featuring the Democratic candidates for Assembly District 47. I'm Chris Murphy, Audience Director of the Cap Times. In just a moment, I'll be turning this over to our moderator, Andrew Bahl, but I want to take a moment to thank all of you who are watching live or perhaps watching a recording of this later. If you're looking for further information about this race or others in Wisconsin between now and the elections, be sure to visit captimes.com and click on the Elections 2024 logo. Another great way to keep up on what's happening politically in Wisconsin is to subscribe to our free politics newsletter, Wedge Issues, which Andrew and his colleague Aaron McGroarty write each Friday. It's got short recaps of our coverage from the past week, plus links to lots of great coverage elsewhere. Just visit captimes.com/newsletters to sign up. We've got a lot to cover with our two candidates tonight, so without further delay, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew, who covers state government here at the Cap Times. Welcome, Andrew.
Thanks, Chris, and welcome all of you all to our candidate forum for the 47th Assembly District. There are 6 competitive contested primary races in Dane County for seats in the state assembly and state senate on the August ballot. The 47th Assembly District is one of them, and we will be doing a forum for each of these contested races. Many of these districts changed under new legislative maps that were enacted earlier this year, and we want all of you all, our readers, our viewers, to have the information that you need before you head to the polls. We are obviously live on Zoom right now, but a recording will be posted to our website sometime in the next day or so. So if you missed part or all of this, if you're watching back later, feel free to hit pause, come back to it. We will be there living on the captimes.com website. We are joined tonight by the 2 candidates in the Democratic primary in the 47th Assembly District, Fitchburg Alder Joe Maldonado and Dane County Board Member Randy Udell. The 47th District includes all of Fitchburg, Stoughton, and the southern portion of McFarland. And voters will go to the polls on August 13th. If you want more information on what you need to vote and early voting, all of that good stuff, we have you covered in our voting guide at captimes.com. And because there is no Republican candidate in the fall general election, the winner of this race, one of the 2 folks we have with us tonight, will be the next representative of the 47th District. Each of our candidates will get 2 minutes for their opening and closing statement. In between, I'll be asking them a variety of questions about issues important to our readers. And actually, a lot of these questions or the issues were raised to us when myself, my colleague, Aaron McGroarty, went across Dane County talking to voters earlier this year. We did an online survey where we heard from hundreds of folks about what they would like for their election coverage. And that work directly impacted the types of questions that you will hear tonight. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond to each question, and we'll alternate back and forth as to who starts first. We flipped a coin before starting this forum to decide who gets to deliver that opening statement first. Joe won the coin flip. And Joe, you have 2 minutes for your opening statement, starting now.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Joe Maldonado, and I'm a candidate for the 47th Assembly District in the state of Wisconsin Assembly. I am a 20-year youth worker, having worked across K-12, higher education, and nonprofit. I'm currently serve as a member of the Fitchburg City Council, where I prioritize ensuring people have access to the things that they need and folks have access to information as well as a voice in the city. I am originally from the city of Milwaukee. I'm of a working class background. My father was in a union. I've been in several unions, and I was the first in my family to attend and graduate from college, earning 2 degrees from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I am running for state assembly because we have a new opportunity with our changed maps to be able to make some concrete change in Wisconsin. I believe in ensuring that we have access to women's reproductive health care, legalization of cannabis, and that we expand our investment in young people, particularly through out-of-school time, early childhood education, and the university system and K-12 system. While I've been on the city council in Fitchburg, I've prioritized making sure that young people have access to the things that we need. I piloted a resolution to be able, and a budget amendment to be able to include the development of a teen center in the city of Fitchburg, which is scheduled to be built in 2026. I've also ensured that we're making smart financial decisions and that residents have access to information about large-scale projects that the city is taking on. I believe that with a new assembly comes a new opportunity, and I have the lived experience both in community work as well as education and local government work to be able to get the job done, to be able to work across the aisle, and to be able to make decisions that benefit the residents of the entire state of Wisconsin. Thank you.
And Randy, now over to you for your opening statement.
Very, very good. Thank you, Andrew. Good evening, everyone. My name is Randy Udell, and I'm one of the two Democratic candidates running to represent the 47th Assembly District. I'd like to thank the Capital Times for organizing tonight's debate, as I believe debates are an important element in civic discourse. I've lived in Fitchburg with my husband, Brad, since 1998. I'm currently a Dane County supervisor representing District 33, which includes the southern two-thirds of Fitchburg. I previously was an alder representing District 4 on the Fitchburg City Council from 2024. And as the first out LGBTQ plus person ever elected to the local office in our city. I was the council president for 2 of those 4 years and was also chair of the finance committee for 3 of the 4 years. In addition, I have served as the elected treasurer of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin since 2015, serving as a core member of Ben Wickler's team, helping manage a multi-million-dollar budget. I'm running for the assembly because I believe our district needs leaders that has a strong grasp on unique needs, from its fertile farm fields to suburban neighborhoods to bustling commercial and mixed-use corridors. I've represented urban, suburban, and rural interests in the past, and I believe that knowledge is vital to any legislator representing our district. Thank you.
So for the first question will be to you, Randy. I'm sure you both have many things in common, but one thing I know for a fact that you have in common is you both either served or are currently serving on the Fitchburg Common Council. What do you feel like is the most impactful work that you did on that body, and how might it shape your outlook and the type of work that you will potentially do in the state assembly?
Well, I think fiscal responsibility is extremely important for any community, even at the state level. As chair of finance 3 of those 4 years, I do believe that my time on the finance committee helped Fitchburg maintain a strong fiscal responsibility to its residents. For example, recently the Moody's declared a new bond rating for the city of Fitchburg. It went from a AA1 to a AAA, and that's very impressive. Not many communities receive that claim, and it's very important for any city to have a strong fiscal responsibility. And we were also able to maintain fairly net neutral taxes within the last 3 years that I was on the finance committee. So with that experience, and with my experience as treasurer of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, managing up to a $40 million budget, I hope to take that to the state assembly and maintain fiscal responsibility at a state level. Thank you.
And Joe, how would you respond to that question?
Sure. One of the earliest initiatives that I took on as alder is moved our polling place in my aldermanic district from outside of the district that was about 2 miles from where a bulk of the population of our residents lived, to right in the center and the heart of the district, adjacent to apartment complexes that hosted thousands of people, many of them lacking transportation. Voter turnout in District 1 was among the lowest for several years, and it increased every election since that. It was very difficult to do during the pandemic, especially with the restrictions on spacing and the need to ensure that we were safe during the pandemic. But I actually managed a partnership with a local nonprofit to be able to serve as a polling place, pass the voting inspection, and moved it successfully to that polling place. And though the place had moved a couple storefronts down, it has remained in the Anton Drive corridor in the district. And with all of the talk about access to voting and making sure people have access to the polls, in one of the districts that has the highest, one of the highest BIPOC populations in the entire state or in the entire county, having access to the polls for all of our residents is incredibly important. It's something I'll value at the state legislature because it's something that I've done at a local level.
So our next question is on an issue we hear a lot about from our readers, and we're going to start with you, Joe. Should the legislature set any additional limits on access to abortion rights in Wisconsin? And should the legislature eliminate even the restrictions that currently exist in state law?
Full stop, I believe in full reproductive rights for women. The striking down of Roe versus Wade was a catastrophe, and it was something that has set back a movement that had been decades in the making. Reproductive rights is healthcare, and abortion is healthcare. As a member of the state assembly, I will fight to ensure that in the state of Wisconsin, abortion is legal.
And Randy, that same question to you.
Yes, no question. I have that opportunity as well at the state level. Women's reproductive freedom is paramount, considering the decision that came down from the Supreme Court. We must, in Wisconsin, overturn what we can to make certain that all women have reproductive freedom rights. And yes, thank you.
So this next question is one we did a preview of this race a couple weeks ago, and I chatted with both candidates for that. This is a question I asked both of you then, but I think it is important, and so that's why we're doing a reprise here. Starting with you, Randy, what do you see as the biggest economic issue facing Dane County, and what should the legislature do about it?
I think there's a huge economic concern, at least from. Let me back up and for clarification. Throughout this entire campaign, I've been attending all of the town board meetings, City of Stoughton council meeting, and in the Stoughton area, there are five, if I have my count down correctly, 5 town boards, and I've attended at this point 3 of the 5, and I have another one scheduled for this week. But in those meetings, I have learned, and it's been no surprise to me because we've had the same issue in Fitchburg, and when I served on the Ag and Rural Committee for 4 years, we worked very hard to push broadband further out into the rural area. But as I have been campaigning, I've also learned that this is not unique to Fitchburg. The rural area around Stoughton, there is a huge lacking of broadband. And from my experience as an AT&T engineer for 30 years, I have the know-how to push broadband further into the district. There should be no reason why a student has to go to a fast food restaurant to obtain internet service, or a farmer doing the same thing, any other business within the district. It has a huge economic impact on our on Dane County. Looks like I'm out of time. I'll expound upon that further later.
And Joe, that same question to you.
Access to education. It's important that our young people, as well as young adults and returning adults, have access to high quality K through 12 education, as well as higher education. I served for a year on the Madison Area Technical College Board of Trustees. I was also an instructor at Madison College, working both with people that were getting out of jail, as well as young people who were first entering into college. I've also worked for 5 years with the Avid Tops program, working with young people, preparing them for higher education. And it's important that our young people and their families have access to education, not only for the sake of education, but for the sake of attaining well-paying jobs that the industry needs. There is a huge opportunity in Dane County for not only trade and tech jobs, but also really high-paying white-collar and semi-professional jobs. And I think ensuring that our technical college system, as well as our university system, is working hand in hand with industry to be able to really ensure that people are connected to the jobs that are in demand, that we will be able to ensure that everybody has a high quality economic way of life.
So this next question is for Joe to begin with, and we'll stay on the economy. Wisconsin has not raised its state minimum wage since 2009. It's at $7.25 for hourly workers currently. Should the legislature take action to raise that? And if so, roughly what dollar amount do you feel like would be acceptable?
Sure. At a bare minimum, we should have a $15 an hour minimum wage. But when we look at inflation, not only in the past 4 years, but over decades, the average minimum wage for a worker is well below what it was, a half a century ago. Though I would push for something higher than that, say 20. I believe at a minimum, the state legislature and all its power should raise our minimum wage to $15 an hour. I also am going to take an opinion that may be a little bit controversial, but I think that in the service industry, the minimum wage should be raised from above what it is, which I believe is $2.33 an hour, so that our service workers don't have to rely on tips and gratuity in order to make a living.
And Randy, that same question to you.
Yeah, no, I absolutely believe that $15 an hour should be the minimum as well, and I would advocate as well that maybe a $20 an hour wage is something that we should be striving for as well. And there really should be some type of inflation or cost of living adjustment as well when that rate is established. If I'm not mistaken, it's the state level that makes that decision, because I've spoken with city officials within the finance department, and with current pay raises and so forth, that does lie with the state level. And as far as a cost of living adjustment for that minimum wage, as far as an automatic. In fact, going back to 2020, I had that conversation at one of our finance committee meetings as to why our poll workers that were being paid $7 an hour, why they were not making a minimum of $15 an hour. And when I left, they currently are making that minimum $15 an hour. So progress has been made, at least at the local level, but we need to continue to do that and continue to take that to the state level for all of Wisconsin to share in that $15 minimum wage.
So this next question, we're going to start with Randy. And in the most recent legislative session, Republican lawmakers proposed a bill that would restrict camping on public land and would have a really large impact on how local governments would address the issue of homelessness. Even if you weren't following that bill exactly, I'm sure this is an issue that has touched all the communities in your district. Is homelessness an issue that should be handled at a fundamentally local level, or is there a role for the state? And if so, what should that look like?
I'm not sure if it should be at the local level, but definitely we're addressing it at the county level. In fact, recently we allocated additional funds for tiny homes in the area of the agricultural drive, and I supported that piece of legislation. Should we be doing it at the state level? Absolutely. Homelessness is an issue, and we need to do a lot more to resolve homelessness. And a lot of it comes down to affordability. And we've seen it even at a local level, affordable housing. In my time with Fitchburg City Council and as chair of finance, we have put money aside from TIF closures. And I believe when I left, it was around $8 million. And that dollar that was set aside for affordable housing could go to new housing, housing within new apartment buildings, retrofitting, upgrades. There's a whole host of things that can be done to help in that arena. Thank you.
And Joe, that same question to you.
Sure. So expanding on the conversation about what Fitchburg has done, I did serve on the housing committee for my first year in the council, and one of the things we're doing is hiring a housing efficiency navigator with the city. So we are investing money into ensuring that we ensure that folks have affordable housing. Not only fixing existing housing stock, but also making sure that we're building more densely and that we're creating and meeting the actual demand for housing. In Dane County, there is a housing shortage, and thousands of units need to be built per year in order to be able to meet that need. I think at a state level, some of the things that we can do is really protect renters. By expanding rights for tenants in order to not be evicted. We need to invest in both emergency housing as well as long-term housing for families to ensure that people have a place to stay. Homelessness is a collective effort. It's something that not only our municipalities need to take a stake in, but also our state. And that comes through resources and the encouragement of development.
Shifting gears a bit, and Joe, this next question is for you. Wisconsin has not legalized marijuana in any form. Should Wisconsin legalize medical cannabis, recreational cannabis, or I guess recreational cannabis and medical cannabis? If you do one, you do the other. And what should legislators prioritize when handling this issue?
So a couple things. I support the full legalization of cannabis. Obviously, there needs to be regulation to ensure that it's safe and out of the hands of youth. But one of the things that several states have done, including our neighboring states, is actually use the revenue from legalized cannabis in order to invest in early childhood, invest in out-of-school time programming, and invest in K-12 programming, mental health programming, and substance prevention. I think we have a tremendous opportunity. One thing that the prohibition on marijuana has done is created a huge incarceration disparity by race. And there are so many people that are locked up for the use of a nonviolent, non-harmful substance. And one of the things that I think that our state should do is not only legalize marijuana, but ensure a pathway to an industry and economic opportunities for entrepreneurs, particularly entrepreneurs who have experienced incarceration, and particularly entrepreneurs from BIPOC backgrounds, to be able to have a footing to be able to make a productive living in the cannabis industry.
And Randy, that same question to you.
Yeah, no, I think my opponent and I do share the same thoughts. I support legalization of marijuana as well. I mean, especially within the mental health and substance abuse areas, we could certainly use that money earmarked for those particular issues. And there's no question about it. There's incarceration, and incarceration should not be for the for carrying marijuana or using. It's just I think in today's society it just should not be the case. And I think some of the numbers that are coming out of, at least from looking at out of state, some of the dispensaries, it appears that as if a significant number of the Wisconsin residents seem to travel across the state line. There's no reason why we should not be legalizing marijuana and bringing that revenue back to the state of Wisconsin.
So, Randy, this next question, we're going to start with you. We've all had a lot of discussions, I think, about drawing legislative districts and redistricting. Should the Wisconsin legislature implement some sort of nonpartisan entity to draw district lines for the United States Congress, the state legislature, or both?
Yeah, no, I'm in full agreement with both, to be quite honest. I think with the gerrymandering of the last 12, 14 years, we are long overdue for a nonpartisan committee to establish the legislative boundaries for both at a state level and for congressional, so that we're not caught back up in that turmoil that we've been working through for the last 4 or 5 years.
And Joe, that same question to you.
Sorry, I 100% agree with my opponent. We need to ensure that there is not a conflict of interest where our legislators are deciding what our map should look like, or the party in power should be deciding, whether that's Republican or Democrat. The 47th Assembly District was one of the most blatant examples of gerrymandering, where we had areas that are non-contiguous with our district being a part of our district. And now that we have new maps, I think we have a tremendous opportunity to make some change. That should be one of the first changes that we make as a legislature, and make sure that our Senate, our state Senate, as well as our congressional maps are fair.
Joe, we're going to stay kind of in the voting vein here. Should the state make changes to the Wisconsin Elections Commission or even eliminate the Wisconsin Elections Commission? Or do you feel that the current system for election administration in Wisconsin is adequately serving local clerks and voters in the state?
Sure. Well, I think one of the biggest things that we need to do is ensure that people have access to voting in various forms. We need to ensure that we have ballot boxes again. We need to expand the period for early voting. And I would go so far as to say that we should consider what the state of Oregon has done and consider online voting so that people can have access and don't have to brave and spend hours at the polls in larger elections, or vote from somewhere that's inaccessible for them via transportation. So I would recommend a whole host of changes to our voting process to ensure that everybody who is eligible has the right to vote and the access to vote easily and without burden.
Randy, that same question to you.
Yes, I'm smiling because I'm in agreement with my opponent once again. Access to voting is so necessary for our democracy to continue to stay as a democracy. Now, easy access to voting is extremely important, as I just mentioned. But even with my own experience as alder with the city of Fitchburg, there was some notice of long lines back in 2022, and in order to resolve that, I spoke with the city clerk, city administrator, and the mayor at that time that this was unacceptable, and the District 4 now has 2 voting locations as well. We must, as a community, provide that access so no voter is discouraged or turned away just because of long lines. And I'll always be an advocate for voter reform and encourage that within the state legislature if I'm elected as well. Thank you.
So We're gonna continue on this topic. It's obviously a very important one. And starting with you, Randy, what is the biggest thing that the state legislature can do to strengthen democracy in Wisconsin?
Wow, I thought we've discussed a number of items, and I'm just going to have to circle back to voter access, and if that's ever removed, we no longer have a democracy. We've made some corrections at the local level. My opponent has mentioned it with District 1. I've mentioned it with District 4, and online voting would be certainly another alternative. Early voting is definitely important, and absentee voting, early voting. I think once the voting we lose that ability, democracy is at risk.
And Joe, that same question to you.
The reiteration of previous questions, we need to ensure that we have fair representative maps. We need to ensure that people have access to the polls. We need to also ensure that people have access to information. It's very important that when decisions are being made at a state level, at a county level, at a local level, at a school board level, that we have various mechanisms for people to not only weigh in, but for their voice and their input and their feedback to be heard. I've prioritized that as a member of the city council, ensuring that when large decisions are being made, that we inform our voters and that our process is accessible. It's accessible by language, it's accessible in different modes of technology, and that we're reaching people in every possible way that we can. But I would agree that access to the polls is the foundation of ensuring that we have a healthy and safe democracy.
So, Joe, we are going to start with you on this next one. Should the state legislature enact a red flag law or a law that allows law enforcement to seek a judicial order for a person who is considered a risk to themselves or others, to get that order for a person to surrender their firearms? Is that a good idea?
We're in a crisis with the access and availability to firearms, particularly assault rifles. I would say that, we ensure that we have, strong background checks to ensure that people who are unsafe do not have access to firearms. So I do agree that we should enact a red flag law.
And
Randy, that question to you.
Yes, I would I would agree with my opponent as well that strong backgrounds are extremely important, and to so that we're not caught up into a particular situation of something that we're not unable to reverse ourselves from, some type of mass shooting. I think it's very important that backgrounds are followed through, and I would support the red flag as well.
Randy, this next question, we're going to start with you. How can the state ensure that police departments in Dane County and across the state are fair and just in how they carry out their duties, they don't engage in racial profiling, and they don't abuse their policing powers?
I'm sorry, will you run that question by me again?
Sure. How can the state ensure that police departments in Wisconsin and Dane County are fair and just in how they carry out their duties, they don't engage in racial profiling, and they don't abuse their powers?
Yeah. Well, I think it's important from a state perspective to certainly provide the funding to maintain a strong a strong, when I say strong police force, but I think a strong, I think the funding needs to be available so that all police officers have the training that's required, so that we do not end up in a situation that we've seen it elsewhere in the nation. If the funding is provided and the training is provided, it will give us a strong police force in the sense of work without I'm trying to find the right words in the sense of it's always very important, at least from my own experience, that training is necessary in order for us to have an educated police force, and so that everyone is on a level playing field and understands. I see I'm getting the sign here. I'm just going to leave it right there at this point.
And Joe, that same question to you.
Sure. There are a few things that can be done. The first is an end to qualified immunity. I think disallowing state and local elected officials to avoid personal consequences related to the interactions that they take on needs to end. We need to ensure that when somebody violates the law, regardless if they are a law enforcement officer, that they receive the consequences for that, because we're talking about human lives. I think with regard to racial disparities, Wisconsin has one of the highest racial disparities in terms of incarceration, as well as police contact. Fitchburg, unfortunately, is no different. We do have a high racial disparity in arrests and of our BIPOC population, and we are the most diverse municipality in Dane County. We need to ensure that we're tracking the data of our police departments, and I feel like as a state, we can put in a uniform requirement that law enforcement offices report stops, report contact by race, so that we have a very clear picture of what the situation is, and that if local departments are targeting civilians by race or have racial disparities, that they do everything in their power to be able to address it. Accountability is incredibly important. Because as somebody that is from a BIPOC population, I've seen it in my family, my city, and my community.
So, Joe, we're going to start with you for this next question. What is the biggest thing that the state can do in the fight against climate change? Obviously, Wisconsin's getting a lot of federal money to do that, but what can we do at the state level, policy-wise, we obviously can't solve the entire problem, but to go down the right path and addressing it.
There are so many things that we could do. One of the things that we can do is invest in renewable energy. I've seen throughout the district, Fitchburg, Stoughton, McFarland, solar panels going up all over the place in residential homes. Fitchburg's made a huge investment in renewable energy. I think the other thing that we need to do is invest in alternate forms of transportation. We need to have rail, high-speed rail in the state. We need to invest in regional transportation authorities so that municipalities and regions can develop transit systems that are robust. We need to make sure we're investing in biking, cycling, and other forms of transportation. And we need to build smaller so that we can have smaller lots, which make less of a burden on our environment. We are in a climate change. Young people know that we're in a climate change. And for the young people that I've talked to, this is their future, and they're going to be around a lot longer than us. We need to ensure that we're protecting our planet. And part of that has to do with how we build our cities and how we create the energy and the fuel to be able to run our buildings, our cities, and our state.
Randy, this next question, we're going to start with you. The state currently has 3 school choice programs, one in Milwaukee, one in Racine, and one that is statewide. Should the state end those programs? And if so, should those funds be reinvested in public schools?
Did you not want me to answer on the environment?
Oh, I
Oh,
knew I was going to do that at one point tonight. Yes, answer on the environment, and then I will repeat the question. I got
okay.
eager.
All right. No, I mean, I think at a state level, we can certainly do we can certainly have a lot of influence on at a local level. When I was on the Fitchburg City Council as well, we invested in electric vehicles and in solar panels, and in working very hard to meet our objective of I'm sure the word is net zero, but at least to reduce our dependence on fossil fuels. I think the state can also make some great strides in providing tax incentives, not only at a federal level, but at a state level. For instance, recently on the Dane County Board, we discussed solar field farms. And I asked the question, why is it that not every new home is considering a solar panel on those brand new homes? Now, I'm not asking the developer to follow through on that, but at a state level, if there's a tax incentive for that investment, every roof, since it faces the sky, why not provide a solar panel system on that roof instead of just continue to build out solar fields? And definitely alternative transportation is critical. Rail is critical. And I'm out of time. Thank you.
I am going to try this again, and I hope this time I will hold my horses and let both candidates respond. The next question, starting with Randy. So the state has those 3 school choice programs, Milwaukee, Racine, and statewide. Should the state end those programs? And if so, should it reinvest those funds into public schools?
No question. I am first, correct, Randy?
Yes.
Yes, no question. I do not support the school choice or voucher. I believe that money is just sucking money from our public school systems. Just as an example, I understand with the Lincoln Center in Beloit. Now, it may be right or wrong, but the funds that are leaving the public school system to support a voucher program for that particular project is just taking money away from that from public schools, and I do not believe that is right. In fact, my understanding is Beloit has to go to a referendum just to support the money that's leaving the public school system. I'm an advocate for public schools, and I always will be an advocate for public schools.
And Joe, that same question to you.
So I grew up in Milwaukee. My parents live in the Harambe neighborhood near downtown, and they live right across the street from a religious choice school. I think it's a very sensitive topic because oftentimes it's used as a wedge for conservatives to be able to say they support working class communities by providing vouchers. However, it's used as a lightning rod to be able to disinvest and defund our public schools. That's wrong. It's not just to working class communities. And we need to not only ensure that we're not using public dollars for religious and voucher schools, but furthermore, we need to increase our investment in our K-12 system, our out-of-school time programming, and early childhood to ensure that when something's being taken away, there's something there to actually replace it. We don't invest enough in our public schools, even without in an absence of voucher programs. So I would say that before we even consider removing funds from choice programs, that we ensure that all of our residents of Wisconsin have access to a high quality K through 12 education.
So, Joe, this next question, we're going to start with you. In 2022, the legislature passed a pretty hotly debated update to the shared revenue law that had an impact for municipalities across the state. Are there further changes in your mind that are needed to that law and to the shared revenue system?
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the biggest challenges with that is the restrictions that shared revenue places on what municipalities can do with that increase in funding. That it has to be used for very specific purposes, i.e., ensure that it's spent towards public safety and that funding does not decrease. I think for Fitchburg as a growing community, that may not be a problem in the short term. But should we ever end up like some of our rural counterparts where populations are declining, that restriction can cripple a municipality and forcing it to keep levels the same or continue to increase funding that doesn't necessarily align with the reality of a municipality. So I think one of the things that we should do with the idea of shared revenue is that we should ensure that municipalities have more freedom in how they use that revenue and what they can do with it, not only in the present, but leading into the future.
And Randy, that same question to you.
Yes, I'm in agreement as well as far as the flexibility with the shared revenue. As I've been listening to many of the town boards and other communities, the limitations do impede upon some of the things that those rural communities can do and can move forward. I think the governor's done some great work as far as working with shared revenue, but I think I think that a lot more can be done, and I think if the legislature changes, we can do some great things to provide additional shared revenues to the communities that rely on the shared revenue. And it's not just the communities, but all communities rely on shared revenue, and some of it is really very limiting to what we can do with it. So, and if I'm elected, I'll make certain that we can provide additional funding for shared revenue.
So, Randy, this next question, we're going to start with you. What's the biggest thing the legislature can do to strengthen the University of Wisconsin system and higher education in Wisconsin more broadly? Because it's obviously goes beyond the UW. We have a technical college system as well. What should the legislature be doing to bolster that?
Well, I think I touched upon it earlier as far as public education, just in general. I mean, public schools at a local level. We mentioned about the voucher. I support the university system that we have. We should be, from a state level, supporting it. Without trying to tie the hands of the university, we have a wonderful system. And having lived throughout the various parts of the country, I hear about the University of Wisconsin system in general, what a great system it is. And we as a legislature should continue to make certain that the university system grows and has the reputation that it deserves. Thank you.
And Joe, that same question to you.
Sure. I am a product of UW-Madison. I'm a double badger. I earned my bachelor's and master's from UW. I'm a first-generation college student. I'm also the beneficiary of a scholarship program, which allowed me to be able to pay for college and not have debt. My parents were working class. They did not go to college, and I'm proud to be a Badger. I also worked for 5 years in college access programming. Another 2 years at the university as an advisor, and I currently work for UW-Madison Division of Extension for the past 4 years. Our university system is strong, but it's constantly under attack and being weakened. UW-Madison is a tier 1 research institution with a lot of resources. However, even UW is being under attack by the Republican legislature. But more particularly, our UW campuses have suffered massive budget cuts and had to lay off staff. And our campuses, our 13 UW 4-year campuses, as well as our 13 2-year campuses, have consistently been at the mercy of those cuts. I would restore funding to the university system to ensure that no matter where in the state that you live and no matter what level that you're at, that you can get a high quality university education as well as a technical education if that's what you choose.
Perfectly timed. Our final policy question, and we're going to start with Joe on this one. There was a lot of ink spilled late last year regarding the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, in a deal reached between the legislature and the UW system regarding their use of, it's a broad umbrella, but programs to support students and employees of color, folks with disabilities, veterans, other marginalized groups. Joe, starting with you, should the UW system push back on any further efforts from the legislature or even internally to further restrict the use of these types of initiatives on campuses across the state?
Absolutely. This is personal for me. I am a proud alumni of the Mercille J. Lee Scholars Program that I mentioned earlier. Mercille J. Lee, may she rest in peace, was a pioneer for ensuring that talented young people from all backgrounds are able to get a value from a higher education system and be able to see themselves in their communities. It was a meaningful place for me. I worked for 2 years for the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Educational Achievement at UW-Madison. I'm a proud former staff member of it, and I'm a supporter of ensuring that our communities from across the state and across the country have access to the university, and that also our staff can see themselves represented in higher education and research as employees. And I think that we struck a bad deal in order to be able to secure resources and stop cuts. I understand why it happened. We sacrificed something that is being sacrificed throughout the country, and there is attack on DEI programs. We are in a nation that is diverse, and we need to ensure that diversity, equity, and inclusion is protected because it protects everybody. It doesn't just protect BIPOC folks. It's something that makes our culture richer because we have different perspectives, different backgrounds, and when we have different backgrounds, we make better decisions.
And Randy, that same question to you.
Yes, UW system should push back. As a member of the LGBTQ plus community, I've seen a harassment with against myself and others. The diversity, equity, and inclusion is extremely important within the UW system, and not only the students but staff. And we should all feel comfortable that we're not in an environment where there is discrimination, harassment. Should be creating family-friendly policies and providing accommodations for all employees of disabilities. And I would, as a legislator, I would support DEI measures.
And so we're towards the end of our time together, but the Cap Times tried 4 years ago when we did our last round of debates to help all of you watching at home maybe get a feel for who the candidates on the ballot are as people beyond just the campaign trail. So we have a couple of lighter questions for both of you before we get into closing statements. You don't have to take as much time as you were on the policy questions, but Randy, we'll start with you. What is your favorite restaurant in the 47th Assembly District?
Oh, favorite restaurant.
The
Oh,
toughest question of the night.
yeah. Something a little bit more simpler, close to home. I love to, my husband and I like to like to visit the Seminole Tap. It's just around the corner from us. We can walk our dog over. It was formerly Funk's. Now it's the Seminole Tap. Kind of the same feeling, but we can walk the dog over. We can sit out on the patio, have a beer. And I think what's really nice, it's really kind of got a neighborhood feel to it. Everybody from the neighborhood of where we live, it's kind of like the Cheers of where we live, the Seminole Forest. So it's just a great place to hang out and to be with friends from the community.
And Joe, when you're not on the campaign trail, what is your go-to hobby or the way you like to relax, unwind after, knocking doors and all that hard work?
Yeah. So I'm not able to do it as much this summer, but I'm an avid gardener. I grow beets, okra, peppers, tomatoes, basil. I grew watermelon one year. I've got two apple trees, and I've got a ton of different spices. I also really love biking. I used to bike commute years ago, rain, sleet, hail, or snow. But I love going out for rides, especially in community with folks that I care about. And getting out that sweat is amazing for my mental health and also getting me some good vitamin D.
Do one more quick round and then go to closing statements. Randy, who is your biggest role model?
Uh, I'm pausing because there's a number of them. My father sticks in my mind. He's a 90-year-old man that still I love to sit down and discuss with him politics. He instilled in me the liberal thought, and he still has a very clear mind, and it's just great to have discussions with him. He talks about labor and how important labor is, and he says, never forget where you came from. Labor and credit unions. When a bank wouldn't provide a mortgage, credit union did. So it's just very simple grassroots. But we talk about politics from a local level to the presidential, and I just really have to go back to my father. He's just instilled so many values into my current way of thinking.
And Joe, we'll close with this. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I don't always follow this. My mom always tells me less is more. Sometimes it's really important, as verbose as I can be, to just stop and listen. And sometimes the best folks that have told me we've had an amazing conversation was when I barely said anything and I just asked questions. So shout out to you, Mom.
Well, we will wrap up here with closing statements. And Randy, we will start with you. You both each get 2 minutes to get the last word in, and your time starts now.
Okay, very good, Andrew. Thank you. My deeply held belief and my experience in local government is that government works best when you bring people together to solve tough problems. I want to bring those values to the state assembly. My vision for Wisconsin and our district is a place where our freedoms are protected, our residents are empowered with the right tools for success in life, and the 8 communities in the 47th district have that advocate that they need at the state capitol. I'm proud to be the candidate and with the most endorsements from the current elected the most endorsements from the current elected officials that live within the boundaries of our district. I've regularly attended town board meetings, pancake breakfasts, parades, and even car races across the district to meet with constituents, to listen to constituents and learn about their issues that matter to them. The 47th District needs a leader with my level of experience to tackle issues like broadband expansion, revitalizing public safety in our growing municipalities, protecting reproductive rights, and more. Regardless of what part of the 47th Assembly District you live in, I'm running to be your voice in Madison. Thank you.
And Joe?
Thank you. I am very excited to represent you in the 47th District. Over the course of this campaign, I've knocked 2,500 doors, and I plan to knock another 2,500 before the August 13th election. I've talked to teachers, I've talked to folks who have really lived experiences with some burdens that one can't even imagine. And all of them tie back to policy. When you think of somebody who's the survivor of a domestic abuse relationship, when you think of somebody who has had to leave public education because of the burden that's being put on our teachers and our school administrators, when you think of somebody who has lived in this country almost their entire life, but has to, because of their immigration status, pay out-of-state tuition and can't get financial aid. When you think of somebody who doesn't have access to transportation and can't get to where they need because they live in a remote or rural area, these are issues that we can actually do something about. I'm proud to have the endorsement of our former or outgoing state representative, Jimmy Anderson, our state senator, Melissa Agard, former Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, as well as 5 current and former mayors of Fitchburg and 5 out of the 7 remaining members of the Fitchburg Common Council. But more important than that, I've got the endorsement of residents. When I talk to people on doors, when we have a conversation about what's important, we share the same values and we share the same aspirations. I'm proud to represent you, and I believe that we need to pull a seat at the table so that everybody has access to decisions, everybody has access to power, and everybody has a voice in how their community and their state is run. So I want to represent you, Joe Maldonado, for Wisconsin State Assembly District 47.
Well, I'd like to thank both Randy Udell and Joe Maldonado for joining us tonight. They are both the candidates in Assembly District 47. Would like to thank all of you for watching us, and remember the primary, August 13th, and stay up to date on captimes.com for everything you need to know to cast your ballot then. Have a great night, everyone, and be sure to tune back in next week, July the 8th, when we have our next forum.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night.